Shabbat Shalom. It is an honor and a pleasure and a really unique and emotional feeling to be here with BJ as it goes through the process of welcoming people back into the sanctuary. I'm not a stranger to BJ. Many of you remember me. Our family comes here every time we're in New York. As a matter of fact, it kind of feels like when I married my spouse, Rabbi Claudia Kramer, I sort of married into the BJ rabbinic leadership and heritage. And her parents were the ones who taught Rolly and Marcelo Hebrew. And I gained a wonderful opportunity for connection also with Naomi and the heritage of Marshall Meyer and much of what makes this place beautiful and special and unique. Becca, you might not know, it might not be on the front wall of the school, but BJ is also part of the heritage of what started the rabbinical school at Hebrew College. When we were beginning to work on it, and we started it together with my teacher, Art Green, and my chavruta then, Rabbi Or Rose, that we were thinking who does what and how do we divide roles and what do people do. And we wondered who was going to be running the Beit Midrash. That is the place where people sit and learn in chavruta. And Art looked at me and Or and he said, "You're both going to do it." And he said, "Well, that's not the most efficient way, to use power." And he said, when you walk into BJ in New York and you see Rolly and Marcelo, this will date the story, you see Rolly and Marcelo standing there together at the bima and leading prayer and singing together. He said, what you see there is the love between them. You see the care between them. He says, and that's one of the most important things that the community has to learn and the community has to receive. Because if the leadership is fighting with each other, is worrying about themselves, then you can say beautiful words about care and love and affection, but that's not the ethos of the community is what's actually modeled. And he said, and we have to remember that. And so I want both of you to be there leading the Beit Midrash together so that the love and care and affection and sense of responsibility that you have for each other becomes the ethos of this community. And the truth is, that's an old story. It's an old story. It's part of our mythology. When the book of Tehillim wants to describe how the people came out of Egypt, God says, or God is quoted as saying in the book of Tehillim, "Vayishlach malachai lefanecha," or Malachi lefanecha, Moshe, Aharon, and Miriam. I sent my messengers before you, Moshe, Aharon, and Miriam. I sent a team to take you out of Egypt. I didn't send an individual. And the parshiyot we've been reading for the last few weeks, Shlach, Korach, Chukat, are actually a very sad story of that partnership falling apart. Begins with the failure of the scouts sent and coming back in Parshat Shlach, and God saying, no, these people will never enter the promised land, and that leads to all of the infighting and the rebellion and last week's discussion about Korach and violently putting down the capacity, the uprising that happened. And this week Miriam dies. This week Moshe strikes the rock instead of speaking to it and gets told that he's going to die. This week, Aaron dies. This week, they have their first interactions with local people in the area of Canaan that they're going to. So they're both failures. They call out to peace in both cases, and in one case, they end up being rejected and they walk around, and in the other case, it ends up a war. And there are ways in which it's a very sad story of what was this once powerful partnership. Eshlach lefanecha malachai Moshe, Aaron, and Miriam. And it falls apart. And another sad part of it is like the model that takes its place when Moshe looks and says, okay, so who's going to take the people into the land? Who's going to be the next generation? He chooses one person. Right? He sends Yoshua in as the leader of the people. And I've often asked myself, like, why not Yoshua and Caleb? There were two spies. Send them both. You don't need one leader. Right? And as part of that, his own disappointment and the falling apart of the partnership that he had been part of in his leading. I think part of the point of having the Torah tell us a sad story like that is that we can learn from that and we don't have to make the same mistakes ourselves. And I think there's tremendous and beautiful power in this community and its leadership in not getting stuck in one place and not getting stuck in, like there's one ethos of leadership that was great. But, Baruch Hashem, there's no great tragedy. Nobody had to die or leave. But there's an openness here for saying, watch how the leadership and the love can grow and expand rather than be limited. Right? And there was so much beauty when Rabbi Felicia was brought in and became part of the leadership of this community. And then when Marcelo went on and went to Costa Rica, and it's okay. And Becca, Ari, and Rolly, and Felicia are opening the door for you now to bring you into the leadership of this community, to let you shine into their love, to bring your love into it, to bring the love of this community. It's been a hard year. It's been a really hard year. And even with all of the distancing, it was so beautiful hearing the rabbis and Ari this morning talking about song and the ways of finding ways to work through that which, one of the things that has been most hurt congregationally by this pandemic, besides for the terrible loss of life and health and friends and family, that as congregations has been that capacity to sing together. And it was so beautiful hearing your rabbis reflecting on that this morning. But even in this year, even in the difficulty and the distancing and working through computers and through screens rather than face-to-face, I've been listening and you've already made an impact. And your love and your care and your teaching has already been heard by people in this community. And you're already a voice in this song, in the harmony that this congregation sings. And it will make your light shine stronger as you will make their light shine. I don't know if many people in the congregation know, but it was also part of the difficulty of this year was that it limited much of what we usually do when we ordain students in our process of ordination. That too had the personal part taken out of it and was moved onto screens and distancing. And one of the things that we always do as part of the ordination, and didn't happen last year, is we give each of our graduating students a talit, and we put it on them physically. And I have a talit here today to put on you, Becca. You know, this talit holds many things in it. It's my teacher put a talit on me when he ordained me, and I will do that for you. I will pass that on for you in the name of all of your teachers at the rabbinical school. It's a wrapping. It's a protection. When we say the words, when we put on the talit, one of the psukim we say is Baruchi nafshi et Adonai, Adonai Elohai gadalta meod, hod vehadar lavashta oteor kasalma. The Midrash says when God came to create the world, God wrapped God's self in light. And from that the world was created, from that shining through. This continuity, this protection, this shining light in creation is a gift of your teachers to you. But the gift of your community to you is that the first thing they have asked you to do with this talit is to say blessing over Torah. Because that's what you're being asked to do. You're being asked to be a blessing of Torah for the people. To be a vessel that allows the flow of that breicha, of that pool into it. To not let Torah stay as a piece of knowledge. Not to let Torah stay as something that gets locked away in the world of religious knowledge or practice, antiquity, holiness that can't be touched. But to turn Torah into a bracha, to make it a way that manifests in people's life, in love of God, in love of Torah, in love of people. So you receive in this talit and in the blessing the gifts of your teacher and of your community that is calling you, Rabbi. When Moshe was still working with Aharon and they founded the sanctuary, and Aharon was supposed to go and do his first act, which was to offer a sacrifice on the altar. He hesitated and held back. And the Torah says that Moshe said to Aaron, go and do it. And our rabbis, Chazal, say that Aaron was hesitating. So like, who am I to do this? Am I the right person? And should I do this? And really, do I have enough to give? And Moshe said, Lech lechach notzarta. Go, do it. This is what you were made for. This is what you were trained for. This is a moment. Go and do it. That's translating the Hebrew word lechach as for this. But Rabbi Elimelech of Lezhansk, the Noam Elimelech, the student of the Maggid of Mezrich, the founding generation of Hasidism, the person who more than any other early Hasidic Rebbe was the teacher of Hasidic Rebbes, translated that statement differently. He translated lechach as because of this. And in his reading, Moshe said to Aaron, go do it. It is because of your hesitation that I know you're the right person for this. It is because it is not all about you. It is not self-evident to you that you are the person that should stand at the focal point. It is from that place of humility that I know that you are the right person to lead the community, and that I know that you are the right person to turn Torah into bracha and into love for the people. Vihi noam Adonai Eloheinu alenu, u'ma'aseh yadenu konena alenu, u'ma'aseh yadenu konenehu. May the sweetness of God be upon us, and may the work of our hands create a foundation for that sweetness. And may the work of our hands create a foundation for God's presence here on earth.